Hi there! Welcome to episode 169 of the WaveBack Music Podcast. My name is Kris.
And I'm Matt.
And we're here to listen to the most interesting video game music there is. Some days you wake up in the morning, get a cup of coffee, go to work, and everything is normal. But some days you wake up to learn your girlfriend has been kidnapped by street toughs, so you and your brother don your color-coded red and blue denim outfits to take the law into your own hands. Today's game is about the second one of those days, and it just so happens to have a legendary soundtrack to accompany it. Watch out for a Bobo is busting through solid rock walls, because today we listen to the music of Double Dragon for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Well, hi there, Matt.
What's up, Kris?
Oh, just thinking about the absurdity that is Double Dragon.
Oh, it's legendary.
It is legendary. It's a wonderful game series that I have so very much love for, and I can't believe we haven't touched on it until now.
It's a plethora of amazing games with great soundtracks, so it's no surprise that it's taken us this long to get to this one.
Right. And yet there's so much Double Dragon to cover in the future. We'll see how many of the games we actually get to. But yeah, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about this episode. I'm excited about Double Dragon. Matt.
Yes.
Let's get to work, shall we?
Yes, let's shall.
Hit us. Hit me. Punch me in the face with some history.
I'm gonna need a bus ticket for that, but I'm just gonna give you the history if that's okay with you.
Sure, fine.
I'm sure our audience is upset.
Wait, which one are you wearing? Red or blue today?
I'm oddly enough, I'm actually wearing gray. I have a gray T-shirt on with gray basketball shorts, so I might be a villain. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there was like a gray-clad villain in Double Dragon 3.
Oh, damn it. I don't know. I feel like you're player 1 and I'm player 2 to this, so I guess I'm red.
You're okay, so you're Jimmy and I'm Bimmy. All right.
Whew, thank God I've got the normal name.
Well, you know the whole thing with Bimmy and Jimmy, right?
I do.
Okay.
But
okay.
For those listening who don't.
Yeah, Double Dragon 3, they misspelled Billy's name in the intro sequence and called him Bimmy. Bimmy and Jimmy Lee.
Whoops.
Yeah, quality control, not exactly the highest priority in the Double Dragon series. But anyways, Back to beating the snot out of me with some history.
And of which there is a lot of history. Thanks, Kris.
Hey, no problem. I couldn't just write a script that said Double Dragon was a beat-em-up game. Have a good day. There's just so much interesting stuff going on with this one. Good luck.
Thanks. Double Dragon was released in arcades in 1987. Following the success of their arcade hit Renegade, Technos was faced with a problem. In Japan, Renegade was released as Neketsu Koha Kunio-kun, the first entry in the now long-running Kunio-kun series, also known as River City Ransom here in the US. Kunio-kun was all about school kids fighting one another, which was heavily steeped in Japanese culture, something that American players knew very little about. So, when it came time to release the game overseas, they turned it into a sort of Mad Max street gang-inspired affair and called it Renegade. Not wanting to do that kind of heavy localization process with the sequel, Technos created a new spin-off series instead and called it Double Dragon, effectively launching the quote-unquote golden age of brawlers. While the arcade game in Japan left the two protagonists unnamed, they were called Hammer and Spike for the North American release, which was handled by Taito. But when the game was finally ported to the immensely popular Nintendo Entertainment System in June of 1988, the series' incredibly wonky mythology started to solidify, naming the Double Dragons themselves Billy and Jimmy Lee. In the game, a gang has ruthlessly beaten and kidnapped a woman named Marion in broad daylight, and it's up to Billy Lee to beat up every single one of them without a single appearance by a police officer, and defeat the gang's boss, Machine Gun Willie. I'll give you 3 guesses what his weapon of choice is, and I bet you won't need the first 2. In the original arcade game, the Lee brothers fought side by side until the end of the game, whereupon Machine Gun Willie's defeat, the two brothers fought one another to the death over Marion's affection. Since the folks programming the NES version of the game weren't able to get proper 2-player co-op working on the platform, they changed it into a single-player affair where Billy's brother was actually the leader of the rival gang and served as the game's true final boss. This, of course, makes little or no sense in the larger mythos of Double Dragon, but that's all part of the series' charm, I suppose. The game was a huge success in both arcades and on NES, as well as the dozens of other platforms it was ported to, including even the Atari 2600, which is really quite a sight to see in action, and has spawned a number of sequels and reboots of varying qualities over the years, including the supremely excellent Double Dragon Neon and Double Dragon Gaiden, and supremely disappointing Double Dragon 4 and Double Dragon 5.
I have to jump in and be the guy from The Wizard. You know the movie The Wizard?
Uh-huh.
When he goes over to enter, when the kids, Fred Savage and them go over to enter the actual Video Armageddon Nintendo tournament. And they say the first game is Ninja Gaiden. Ha! It's Gaiden.
Excuse me.
Not Gaiden. How very dare you?
How very dare I? How very dare you give me 2 paragraphs worth of reading material knowing full well I'm dyslexic?
You knocked it out of the park here, buddy.
Yeah, through constant and heavy editing.
They don't know that. The game's music is by Kazunaka Yamane, who both composed the original arcade versions and rearranged them for the NES version, which we're covering here today. Some of his other works include Super Spike V-Ball, which, now that I know that, makes total sense, the Combat Tribes, and other Double Dragon games, including Double Dragon 4, Super Double Dragon, and Double Dragon 2, The Revenge. The Revenge of who or what? Doesn't matter. Double Dragon 2 is hilarious because I remember playing the NES version of Double Dragon 2, and the game just starts. And then I tried the arcade version of Double Dragon 2, and they just walk up to Marion in the street and machine gun shoot her to death. Just right there in the street. Broad daylight. Double Dragon's nuts. What's your personal history with the Double Dragon series, specifically the NES version of Double Dragon?
This was one of those games that I think everybody had but me. I've played the hell out of it. Those games are notoriously hard, those old games. I've never beaten it. But I've had a lot of fun, both watching my friends play it and play it at the same time, because the co-op was not there. But I own, I don't know if I still have it, Part 3. That's the one I have like the most familiarity with, because obviously I owned it. But yeah, no, I had a lot of fun both watching and playing it with my friends, like late night sleepovers and stuff. It's a good game, it's like, because it made me think of all the other like side scrollers from the arcade. And I think there was a time in my mind where you play the arcade game and then you saw that it was on the home console and you were hoping that was an exact port, and it never was. And that I always found that massively disappointing.
Right.
And
that
and
was
so,
a common thing.
Yeah, so seldom did you really get that, even as things progressed,
Oh yeah, arcade perfect ports weren't really as much of a thing until much later, unless you were a millionaire and you owned a Neo Geo.
Right. Oh, don't even get me started on the Neo Geo. But anyway, yeah. So I used to love this game though. I had a lot of fun. I could still see the graphics in my head, and like the animations were so like, I want to say perfect, but I think that's like nostalgia talking, where I'm like, oh, this is such a fun game, and the graphics are great and things like that. I love it.
Well, the animations were, I would say, perfect for this game and at this time. This is a relatively early game, and Double Dragon 2 was a much more technologically advanced game, but for this one, like, you'd punch somebody and then they would like bend over with their mouth open, like reeling, like, because they were stunned. And like this game moved really, really well on NES, which is actually something that felt quite a bit different from its arcade counterpart. But yeah, the whole thing about arcade to home conversions was really something interesting, especially at this time. Not to get too long-winded before we start listening to the music, but there is this supposed mandate at Nintendo that if you were going to port your game to their system, it had to be something unique. So that's why a lot of games that made it to NES were reimaginings instead of just straight arcade ports for the most part. Like, you look at Ninja Gaiden Arcade versus Ninja Gaiden for NES. Extremely different games.
I used to love that arcade game. My God.
Yeah, the arcade game was a beat 'em up like Double Dragon, whereas the home NES game was a completely different action platformer. Rygar was a super, super basic, just basically a ratchet scrolling beat 'em up game, whereas the home port was a vaguely Metroidvania sort of exploration based game. You know, the Capcom Section Z, like there was a lot of those kinds of games. And Double Dragon was a really interesting port because this, of course, I played this before I had played the arcade version, the NES version. It had this like level up system where you would gain new moves. The higher your score got, you get those hearts at the bottom. So you eventually learn how to do like the hair toss and, you know, jumping on top of the bad guys when they're down,
Right.
the jump kick and stuff. Which was really neat. But of course, the mythology of Double Dragon with these NES ports was like all over
Oh,
the
no.
map.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the instruction manual for Double Dragon 2, they're like, yeah, Jimmy's reformed now and he's a good guy.
He was just joking.
Yeah, it's like, okay. I was obsessed with this game as a kid. I adored its soundtrack, the gameplay, the visuals, everything about this game was just so much fun, and I spent eons working my way up to beat it. You know, just kind of getting to that point where I could finally finish off this game, which is really tough. Not quite as hard as Double Dragon 3, which is just merciless.
Yeah.
In that you had no lives in that game. It was just, you die once, that's it. You're game over. Good luck. Which was itself a much better system than the Double Dragon 3 arcade game, which is brutally terrible. It's, look up Double Dragon 3 for the arcades. It is a bad game. It was actually one of the first instances of like a pay to play kind of thing, like a pay to win scenario. Like you would have to actually use real life money to get power ups in the game, which is.
Ooh.
That didn't go over well at all with anyone, and the arcade game was kind of a miserable failure. But yeah, Double Dragon, super awesome. Let's listen to the wonderful music of the original Double Dragon for NES. First things first, we're going to get the opening theme. Now, most of these songs were also the same songs in the arcade rendition, but for my money, I adore the NES flavors, which is actually, I think, the composer's preferred renditions of them as well, as I have the soundtracks on vinyl. And they are for both the Double Dragon and Double Dragon 2, the NES versions, not the arcade versions. So take that for what you will. But I love these songs. This is the opening theme from Double Dragon, the main Double Dragon theme, as it were. The track is just called Opening, and let's go ahead and give it a listen. Enjoy. That is opening from Double Dragon, and I remember popping in this cartridge, and there is no, like, made by Technos, distributed by Tradewest, none of that. You turn that thing on and immediately just blasts this song in your face, and it's like, all right, let's go beat up some street gangs, yes! I love this. I love this song. It's such a good song. It's such a great tune. It's just, fantastic.
Oh, it rips from the rip. Like, you're right. It's like the first fist into your face. You know what I mean? You clack it on. Yeah, it's great. It's the right level of energy to go out and like beat the, snot out of street gangs.
There you go. Knock them senseless.
So good. I really appreciate the use of like the dropouts. It gets a quick like moment of silence, and then it pops out like, ooh, that's really effective. I'm always so impressed with the capabilities or limitations, I guess, in this case, of the sound card and the system, and just what these composers were able to do with it. Like, really, I was talking about film last night with a coworker, and I was saying, some of the best stuff has come out of your limitations because you have to be real creative, and this is certainly no different.
Yeah, 100%. This is a strikingly dynamic soundtrack. And yeah, we're just going to keep listening to wonderful songs, including this next one, which is super cool because this song is called Departure. Now, if you've played the NES game a bunch of times and you're not a complete lunatic like me, you've probably only heard the first few seconds of this track because the only bit of this song you get to hear in the game is the first couple of seconds. But it's actually an entire song. Who knew? Which if you go track down or full video game soundtracks, which are just rips from the games themselves, you can actually hear the entire version of the song. So I would venture to guess for the first time for a lot of our listeners, this is the first time they would be hearing the entire version of Departure from Double Dragon for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Enjoy. Boom, there you go. Departure. How'd that grab you?
You're right. I don't think I've ever heard the whole thing.
Nobody had, unless you're a crazy person who actually tracks down video game soundtracks like me. Nothing against crazy people. They're my favorite people in the world. I'm crazy people. But yeah, yes. You only ever hear the first couple of seconds of that in the game. It just says mission 1, do, and it just clips. And then you just go right into the stage. You never hear the full song. But there it is. It's a pretty catchy tune.
Yeah. I dig it because, it's supposed to be some kind of like bass line and snare.
Yeah.
With those accents. It's great. It's and it sets the tone like, this is what I think they think the gritty streets sound like when they made Rumble in the Bronx and they shot it in Vancouver and they're like, yeah, this is what the Bronx looks like. It's dirty. You know what I mean?
There's nothing quite like, nothing says the Bronx quite like Canada.
Yeah, like mountains. I remember as a kid, all the mountains I would climb. Fun times. I had a brother, but I had to leave him on the mountain because he died. Shame.
Life is tough in the Bronx.
Anyway, all jokes aside, I love it. It's a great little tune.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's I think it's really neat that they wrote it to loop too. Like it's got a loop.
Why would you do that if it only lasts 3 seconds on screen?
Exactly. It's such a
just you wasted like good composition on something that no one's ever gonna see. It's a real shame.
Yeah, I always think it's so cool when, especially in old cartridges, where you get to hear these little bits of unused songs or unused tracks. Like in Mario 2, I remember the first time I glitched the game in order to play the, when you go in the sub areas in Mario 2 and it plays the Mario 1 theme. Like you can glitch the game to keep playing that music, and like it doesn't go through the entire song, but it does go through enough to loop, which is pretty wild. I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, this is so cool. Of course, recently I discovered that there was a just weird sidetrack. Semi-recently, there was a prototype version of Super Mario Brothers 2 that was discovered that has an unused underground track. The Super Mario Brothers underground music, the do. Yeah. So that song's in Super Mario Brothers 2, and it's got like sort of the pumping drum beat from the Mario 3 version. Okay. So like they were cooking that up back in Mario 2, and then they never used it in the game. It sounds terrible. The drum beat just sounds awful, and it's really overbearing. So you can tell it's just not done. But it's a really interesting track. Anyways, back to Double Dragon. So now we're ready for business. We're ready for the real business. We're ready for the stage 1 theme. The song is called Slums. This is the Double Dragon song. Maybe even more so than opening. Slums is like the Double Dragon song. It's also one of the longest tracks of this episode, clocking in at a whopping 1 minute and 32 seconds.
Oh, I don't know if I've got that kind of time.
Put your feet up for this marathon. Here is Slums from Double Dragon. Enjoy. Yes, I love that song so much. That was Slums from Double Dragon. Man, that song's good.
Oh no, absolutely. That guitar solo.
That guitar solo is so sick.
It's so unexpected, and then like, why does it go so hard? It doesn't have to. It's just
Yes, it does.
It's
Oh
88.
yes, it does.
It's NES. Like, it didn't have to go that hard. It had no business going that hard.
You're right. They could actually have just looped the song without doing that whole extra part. But like, man, they programmed a straight up guitar solo like that.
Oh yeah,
they just went completely
note bends
bonkers
and everything.
Yeah, whole 9 yards. I would love to hear how that was programmed. Like, did he write that on guitar first and then just transpose it or what? Like, it's such a good song. It's so awesome, so invigorating and action packed, and great for beating your first abobo.
The first of many.
The first of many multicolored abobos.
So, guitar solo aside, right? That song has got such high energy. You're absolutely right. It's the proper, opening track to getting out there and kicking butt. It gave me it was very reminiscent of Konami stuff. It's very reminiscent of Mega Man. It reminds me so much of a handful of tracks out of Mega Man 2
stage.
Yeah. But like in a good way. I'm not trying to
Oh yeah, it's not derivative. It's just stylistically
No.
similar.
Yeah, no, but it gives me the same feels too. It makes me want to go out and destroy the enemy without mercy.
Love it to death. Okay, this next one is the stage 2 factory area. And this is something I didn't really notice until I had played the arcade version later. Is that all these stages are actually connected, and in the arcade game they are literally connected. They don't go to a different screen and say mission 2. They just scroll right to the next area. So like this, the slums go right into the factory, which goes right into the forest, which goes into the cave, et cetera, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, this is the factory area where you can bludgeon people with a cardboard box, which has never made a lick of sense to me, unless there's something really heavy inside said cardboard box. But it just looks, I love it.
Yeah, if the box is open, then it makes no sense. If the box is closed, well, you're telling me there's a chance.
You're telling me there's a chance. There's something in there that's not ruining the cardboard box. I love this game. I love how stupid it is. Here is Factory Area from Double Dragon. Enjoy. I love that song too. I cannot overstress the importance of good music in beat 'em ups, because at the end of the day, what you're doing is effectively rather monotonous. And while it can be, the gameplay itself has to be fun. The soundtrack really needs to be able to drive you through, the same punches and kicks over and over again. And boy, does this game nail it. That song, there's really not much to it, and it doesn't matter. It's so good. Like, it's all very, kind of very backgroundy, and then when it finally comes to the it's just so good. It's so catchy. I love it.
I
Perfect
don't know
energy.
Oh no, I 100% agree with everything you say. Parallel your remarks in every aspect. For some reason, this song is more in my brain than the first level, and I don't know why.
Well,
I have no idea why I would know this more than the other.
There's a so the end. This is such a stupid story,
Boy.
And I can't believe this has stuck with me for so long. There was so my friend Sean, there was some kid that used to play this game at his house, and he told me about this thing that happened one time So the end of this game, the end of this level, you have to climb this like 9-story construction site thing to fight the boss, and who's just a Chintai, who is just a regular character from that stage on. But you fight one of him up at the top, and Sean told me about this time. The kid was over there playing the game, and he went up there. He was trying to lure the Chin over to the side of the screen, because if you can lure him over to the side of the screen, you can just knock him off the building, and that's it. Boss fight over. And then he walked off. He accidentally walked off the side of the building himself and fell down all 9 stories, and then got up. And the kid said, and I can't believe I have this still memorized. The kid said, "Yeah, that's right. Not 7, not 8, but 9 stories up. And I didn't fall. I wasn't pushed. I jumped. Why? Because I'm bad. I'm tough. I'm from the streets. Word to your mother's uncle."
I don't think I've heard a more dated statement. Word to your mother's uncle.
And this kid was like 6 or something. It's just amazing. There's just something wonderful about it. I wasn't bad. I didn't fall. I wasn't pushed. I jumped.
Quick question, need clarification. The boss's name was what?
I believe it's Chintai was how they were referred to him in this game.
And I want you to know that I immediately got the image of a chin with a tie on it in my head because I'm 7 years old. Word to your mother's uncle.
So, like, it's nailed it.
Yep.
So, like, this is actually a character that shows up in Double Dragon 3. You can recruit after defeating the boss Chin, who is the brother of this boss.
Making up for his brother's sins.
Something like, well, I mean, he's a boss, and then you beat him, and he's like, you know what, I'll help you out. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but
it doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to. He also looks nothing like this guy who wore purple pants and had a big purple like afro going on. Just really interesting character designs. All right, so the next song is Forest. This is a weird song. It starts off pretty normal, but it gets to this one part that's just like, it just starts making really strange noises for some reason, and then it just loops back over again. This song has always stuck out to me because of that, because you'd just be cruising along in the level and everything's going just fine, and then all of a sudden the music just goes completely bug nuts, and you're like, oh, is everyone okay? What's going on? Is my Nintendo going to explode? So yeah, here's Forest. Enjoy. There you go. That's the forest. You know, just like when you go into a real forest, things just get progressively stranger and stranger until, I don't know, an alarm goes off and then everything goes back to normal. What a weird song, huh?
That only happens when I go into the forest and I take mushrooms. That was something else. I definitely don't remember that song. That had such a interesting energy about it.
Yes, that is definitely one way to put it. I remember this song. This is one of the songs I remember the most in this game because this is the stage that had me stumped for the longest time. This is the stage that had that bridge. Like, this is the stage that Jimmy Woods eventually died at got pulled away from the quote unquote arcade cabinet in The Wizard. God, I love The Wizard. It's such a good movie. But and anyway, this has the bridge. So like, if you make one wrong step doing the trying to jump over the bridge and you land in the water, you instantly die because apparently these martial arts experts cannot swim even a little.
Wow.
So like this is where I would always get my game overs as a kid until I eventually mastered jumping over those little missing parts in the bridge, and then you get to fight the Abobos and all that other jazz. But yes, this song was always stuck in my head for a lot because this is as far as I could get for a long time as a kid. But woo.
There's quite a few games that I have that same kind of story with, but this is not one. I've never gotten this far in this game.
Well, it's tough. It's a toughie. It's a long stage, and this is some weird music.
And this is the soundtrack for it.
Like this is everything else in this game just really kind of lines up, but this song is so completely unhinged. Like what? I would love to know what happened. I would love to know what the story is behind the composition of this song. Of like, how did you get here? How did we go this far off the rails? Because this is really bizarre music. Not necessarily bad, but it's something that sticks out like a sore thumb. Anyways.
Yes, very much so.
Let's move on to some better music.
Yeah.
Let's move on to what's quite possibly one of the best songs in the entire Double Dragon pantheon. This is the Cave theme. The song is called Cave. This song freaking rules. I used to love it when I was a kid. It kind of sticks out like a sore thumb on this soundtrack. It has a very unique sound to it, but it is so catchy and so darn good. Here is Cave from Double Dragon. Enjoy. That was Cave from Double Dragon. God, I love that song. I love that song so much. It's so good. It's so weird. It's so good.
There's something I can't quite put my finger on it. It invokes clowns and clown cars and clown antics.
I always thought it had like a vaguely Russian sound to it. That's
Ooh. Yes. Very the theme to Tetris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear that. It's a lot of all right, all jokes aside, it's a really good one too. It's got a lot of it's a nice high energy. Put together very well actually. I like the bass is really good in that one. We always talk about our bass lines. I really like that bass sound there.
I love the loop too. I really love every single ounce of this song. It's just so good. There is an excellent cover of this by the Mini Bosses because this translates so well to electric guitar. It's off of their album Brass. It's just called Double Dragon, and it is killer because this song is killer, and the Mini Bosses rule. So definitely track that one down. Give that one a listen someday, some way. Cave, wonderful song. Moving right along, we go from the cave to the hideout.
Like you do.
Wait, is this hideout or fortress? Hold on, let me double check my my vinyl here. I have the actual track names on here. Yeah, no, it's hideout. Yeah, got a little confused. Just called Hideout. Another good song because they're all good songs. That's why we're listening to them. Here's Hideout from Double Dragon. Enjoy. I mean, really, there's really not much to that song at all. And yet,
No.
it's still so good.
Its simplicity speaks volumes to its massive nature.
I love Massive Nature.
They're one of my favorite Swedish bands of all time. The
No,
way they do that thing. Oh, anyway.
There's really not a whole lot to say about the song other than
No.
I love its bass line. Like, it's all just built around
Yes.
that one bass line, and I adore that bass line. It's so great.
No, it's fantastic. It's I joked about it being simple and massive, but I mean it. Like, it's sometimes less is more, and sometimes the little things really do shine through. And that bass line's real simple. You know, it is the anchor to the whole track in this particular case. It's very good.
Yeah, fun song. Definitely a bit repetitive, but it's okay because it really works within the confines of this stage, I would say. So yeah, it's a winner. Moving on. Really, this is our last track, honestly, because there is no boss music to be had or anything. And I just love the name of this track. It's called Huge Fortress.
When I become a video game supervillain, that's what I'm looking for in a lair, a huge fortress.
That's right. Not just big. It's got to be huge.
I want to get lost in it. I want to be like Mel Brooks from Spaceballs.
Phenomenal. Well, I'm not going to top that.
This place is so big.
Here is
the video of the film. Sorry.
No,
I'm done. I promise.
Here is Huge Fortress from Double Dragon. Enjoy. There you go. That's what a huge fortress sounds like.
I believe it. Because I feel like you're walking and then you turn a corner and you're like, where the hell am I? And then panic sets in. And then you walk for a little bit more and then you see a sign. You're like, oh, okay, cool. And then you turn the corner again. You're like, wait, no, this isn't it. And panic sets in again. So I love this track a lot. I especially love the second half to it. My only, I don't know, regret, not that I made it, or wish is that drum beat could have come back over and sat behind that secondary part, because I think that would have been just really, really cool.
Yeah, I agree. That would have been cool.
But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I think it's absolutely great track.
Great track. Great game. That's
Agreed.
it. We did it.
I can't believe it.
It's so funny to think that the Double Dragon soundtrack is just so unbelievably short. This is such a hilariously short soundtrack, but
I mean, you get that with older games.
Yeah,
sometimes.
it's not. This game seemed so insurmountable when we were young, and it's a pretty short game. It sure didn't seem that way. But here we are. That's Double Dragon. That's it. That's all we got. That's our show.
Yep.
Final thoughts? Anything you want to say?
It does make me want to play Double Dragon again. Honestly, I haven't played it probably like 20 something years or whatever, but yeah.
Well, it is available on Nintendo Switch Online. The first is the first game? No, I think it's just the second game actually. But they are releasing a collection of the classic Double Dragons next year. As a matter of fact,
it does seem to be the way right now.
As long as it's a good one. What makes me excited about Double Dragon Collection? It's coming from Arc System Works, who currently owns the Double Dragon license. Earlier this year, they released the exceptionally well done Double Dragon Gaiden, which is really just a couple months old. But the Double Dragon Collection, I believe, is the first time we're seeing proper re-releases of Double Dragon Advance and Super Double Dragon. First times since their original release. So it has Super Double Dragon Advance, Double Dragon NES, Double Dragon 2 NES, and Double Dragon 3 NES. The remarkably snoozeworthy fest of Double Dragon 4, and that's it. So yeah, one, two, three, four. Advance. Advance is interesting because Advance is kind of like a remake of the first game, but it adds like a whole lot of new gameplay stuff to it. It's
Mm-hmm.
really good. Double Dragon Advance is outstanding. So that's going to be a pretty killer collection to get. I do hope it has some other cool behind the scenes stuff in it because as collections have been getting better and better over the years, the bar has been raised pretty high on making collections with good bonus features. So I got my fingers crossed because I love the Double Dragon series. But either way, good stuff, good times. That's Double Dragon, and that's our show. Join us next time when it's going to be Matt's pick. Matt, what are we going to listen to?
I made an allusion to it in the spooky special. I've been playing it nonstop. It's really just infected my entire life right now because that's the type of gamer I am. I get sucked into a game for a very long time and I don't play anything else. I'm talking about Dead Cells. This soundtrack is just so friggin' good. Shoe in for me. Had to do it. So we're gonna do Dead Cells the base game because there's a bunch of expansions. There's a Castlevania expansion. We're just gonna do the base game.
Okay, I'm glad you didn't say Candy Crush.
That's actually gonna be my next episode. So maybe
all right,
I should change that.
Dead Cells, very excited. I really tried to get into this game and it didn't catch me for some reason, but I'd like to give it another go someday. In my copious amounts of spare time.
Oh, but you know it.
There you go. That's it. We here at the WaveBack podcast are incredibly grateful to everyone who listens, and we love communicating with you when we can. We have a couple of ways you can do that. There's the Geekade Discord channel, in which we have a WaveBack chat where we frequently discuss all manner of stuff related to video game music and whatever our next episodes are going to be. Of course, you can always still send us an email at mail@geekade.com, and while you're at it, check out all our social media channels, which you should totally follow, like, and subscribe to. Not probably. You should, if you haven't already. WaveBack and other Geekade podcasts are made possible thanks to the Geekade Patreon page. There, patrons can get access to a monthly podcast topic and recording schedule, get early access to most of Geekade's shows, including this one, and more. If you've enjoyed our podcast over the years, follow the link in the description and give it a look. We really appreciate it. And finally, as always, be sure to check out all the other great content we have on our site over at geekade.com. We're going to do what we always do, or whenever there's the option to anyway. We're going to leave you with the ending theme. It's 24 seconds long, so... but it's Buckle nice. Up. It's you're reunited with your girlfriend. You just beat up your brother and theoretically forcibly made him be a good guy again, or maybe he was brainwashed. That's entirely possible. It's the 80s.
It's true. Brainwashing was a big thing.
Brainwashing, amnesia, could be anything.
Very Cold War tactics.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. Enjoy Ending. Enjoy Double Dragon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Good night.